prime thing is you have to win.
Ill intent, violence, physicality, pain. Enough is enough.
All right, welcome back to the Just Win podcast. I'm Ted Nguyen. That's Tashan Reed. That's Nick Tafur, who is holding his mic today. We are actively taking care of the sound problem. We don't want to hear about this in the YouTube comments anymore. But today we are going to preview the Steelers game, another must-win game for these Raiders. And even though things seem bleak, they're just 2-3, and they're still in the race. But let's get into our show topics, and we're going to start with Aidan O'Connell, who's going to take over as quarterback for the Raiders. Originally, Antonio Pierce came out and said they were going to have a competition in practice to see who the starter was going to be, which is an approach I don't think makes sense considering, you know, I think the competition should have started week 1 to week 5. He should have got a lot of information from the first 5 weeks of the season, and going into practice and splitting reps is just not a great idea. There's only limited amount of reps, and to try to split those between two quarterbacks is just not asking for a great result, in my opinion.
Well, they didn't do that. So named a guy on Wednesday morning, and Aidan O'Connell got all the starter snaps so far this week, and that'll continue obviously as long as he stays healthy. But I mean, we kind of felt like things probably trending in this direction. Given Minshew got benched against the Broncos after throwing that second interception, and not to say that Aidan O'Connell was much better in that game, because I don't think he really was. He threw an interception of his own and wasn't able to help them rally in that one, but. Seemed like the Raiders just think he has more upside moving forward. Minshew was really struggling with turnovers, like his completion percentage, and I think his counting stats look fine, but wasn't really able to be effective on throws down the field, turned the ball over too often, took some sacks he probably didn't need to. So wanted to give a change of pace to the offense, and usually when teams, one of the first levers they pull when they try to do that is making a quarterback change if they can. So they did, and we'll see if O'Connell's able to put some better film out there starting this week against the Steelers.
Yeah, I think the turnovers are what made the decision in the end. I think they were kind of, more I understand, they were kind of torn on Monday and Tuesday. I'm not sure they were leaning towards Aidan, but I think when they got down to it, they figured, let's try something different. I think it's weird because Gardner, actually, I think I wrote today, he was 8th in the league in the completion percentage, like 71%, which is pretty good. But when he missed, he would miss badly, which I'm not sure how that works or what the mechanics are on that. But clearly, even the touchdown pass to Bowers in that game was not a good pass. I mean, it was. I'm not sure that was where he wanted to throw it, but I think with Aidan, you know what you get. We saw it last year. Definitely going to get rid of the ball faster. The danger is that he's not able to really escape pressure that well, and so this week, TJ Watt's not your ideal guy you want to go against if you're Aidan O'Connell, but ideally the O-line gets a little better. But it's definitely. I think at 2-3, you might as well try and spark the offense the only way you really can. That's the quarterback change.
Yeah, I think the big problem with Minshew was just holding on to the ball, creating his own pressures, and even when he had clean pockets, he was just very skittish and just was not able to set his feet really. And there were times when he got moved off his spot, but like you could get moved off your spot as a quarterback and just maneuver around a pocket, but it seemed like every time he got moved off his spot, he was ready to scramble rather than and look downfield. PFF charged him with causing pressures or charging him with the pressure rather than offensive line with pressure 20% of the time, which ranked 10th highest. Bryce Young is still number 1 at 38%, but he's going to probably remain that way because he's not going to play and lower that percentage. But just to give you an idea what kind of quarterbacks on this list. But there are quarterbacks on this list that get charged with high pressures, like Patrick Mahomes, Jaden Daniels, but those guys also create explosive plays, and Gardner Minshew was just holding onto the ball and not creating explosive plays. So that was an issue. And for context, Aidan O'Connell ranked 26 in this metric last year. So I think he will be able to get rid of the ball a little faster. and that's going to be pretty important against the Steelers pass rush.
Yeah, I think something that, you know, Vic was mentioning, Gardner Minshew's escapability and mobility being something that helped him get the job. But I mean, it wasn't really working out like that in games. I mean, he's taken 15 sacks this year, which is tied for the seventh most in the league, and he was holding on to the ball too long. And so I don't think he was, again, we know that he's not Lamar Jackson or anything like that. And so I don't think that was really, they weren't really getting that benefit. And so the hope is that O'Connell, while he's not as mobile, can get the ball out quicker and be more on time and get through his progressions and have the offense have more of a, synchronization to it. I think they've been out of sorts and weren't fully clicking so far this season. And, Minshew's fine on those short underneath passes. And that's probably why his completion percentage is so high. But anytime you ask him to make those intermediate to deep throws, things start to get a little bit wonky. And I think we saw that as well. And so, I mean, it's nothing that we haven't seen from Minshew so far throughout his career. We pretty much know who he is at this point. Whereas with O'Connell, he's only a second year guy. I know he's older, but theoretically still has some more room to improve and an upside moving forward. And so we'll see if he's able to put that on display this season.
I think Gardner never looked really comfortable in the offense, which is it's obviously a new offense, and you wonder how Aidan will do. He's been watching it for 5 weeks, and obviously had camp to learn it, but he couldn't beat him out of camp. So ideally, he's watched and kind of learned what it takes, and then, he's got some familiarity with Myers and Tucker from last year, so maybe that'll help him. But it's gonna be a tough test. The defense they're going against is pretty good. And I think yeah, I think it's just a matter of Luke Getsy kind of making it easy for him. I think we'll see more, hopefully more jet sweeps and more. Good, the running game has to get going. It hasn't been. Like, there's one week where it was good, otherwise it's been kind of pretty bad. So I think that's going to be a key to a happy life for Aiden O'Connell.
Yeah, I agree. And we'll talk a little bit more about the Steelers game and them potentially running the ball on the Steelers a little bit later in the pod. But let's get to our next topic. Any updates on Devante Adams?
We actually saw him in the cafeteria. We were walking back
Oh,
from the locker room
what's he
today.
eating?
So I didn't watch what he was eating, but I just noticed. But I mean, so he is back in the building. I'm not sure how often he's been back, but I don't think he was back here last week. Just it's a new development, but we're kind of in a weird spot because I don't think I think he still wants to get traded. I think they like to trade him, but right now they haven't found the right offer. I think a lot of teams right now are 3-2 or 2-3, so they're not really willing to make a huge leap as far as giving up a lot of draft capital. We don't really know what kind of year you're going to have, so I think that's the timing is part of it. The price tag is part of it. The second round pick's pretty steep. That's what they want, and also they don't seem like they're willing to pay down the salary to help get a better pick. So they don't. I mean, so there's a lot going on. I think we'll see what happens after this week. And one thing I was talking to Tashan about was I think, one of the teams that likes him or has interest is the Steelers. You can't trade him with the Steelers this week because you're playing them. So maybe that happens after the game. That's also a possibility. So a lot of things could happen. And even one of them now is that Devante could come back. I mean, I think I had it at 0% on Monday that he'd come back. Now I'd probably say we're up to 8.5%. I don't know, but there's a shot, there's a chance now where it's not impossible. He's back here and they try and patch things up.
You give me shit for all these weird percentages, but you throw out 8.5%.
I give you shit in general, so I don't know if that's just about percentages. So it's just the way I live my life.
Yeah, but in terms of interested teams, I mean, we did report an update earlier this week alongside Diana Rossini. To our knowledge, the Chiefs, Cowboys, Ravens, and Commanders are all teams that are currently not in negotiations with the Raiders for Adams services for various reasons. The teams that are still in, the Jets, the Saints, the Steelers, and the Bills. Like you said, they're playing the Steelers this week, and then in terms of the Jets and the Saints, they've had a couple pretty significant developments on their front. The Jets firing head coach Robert Saleh earlier this week. And then Derek Carr, the Saints quarterback, got hurt on Monday Night Football against the Chiefs, and he's going to miss a couple weeks. And so both of those teams had some things that we didn't quite factor into the math as of last week that could potentially change things. They're still in discussions with the Raiders about potentially changing for Adams, but they obviously have a few things they need to figure out on their end as well that could potentially, delay a deal from getting done. And so I think the main thing that's changed at this point is, talks have slowed up a little bit. It seems like it might take a little bit longer than we initially expected. I think we were thinking maybe it would take a week or so to get done. Now it might be something that drags a little bit. Adams, he's still injured right now. He's recovering from that hamstring injury. He hasn't been at practice, even though he's been at the facility. And even if everything was fine, like he probably wouldn't be playing this week against the Steelers. And so that's probably another factor in it as well. I mean, you're already the math of trading for an Asian receiver and giving up a lot of draft compensation and taking on his full base salary, which at this point would be in the $11 million range. But he's also dealing with an injury, and so there's a lot of factors in there, along with teams' individual situations that can make this drag on a little bit. And so, I still think this ends with him getting traded, but it may take some time to get something done.
Yeah, Bill Belichick on his podcast, which is a little weird to say, was talking about the second round draft pick ask is just way too high considering that you have to pay him over $10 million this year and his contract situation next year. I always thought that if he were to get traded, that he might come up with an agreement with the team that he gets traded to rework the last 2 years of his deal. But just listening to the national narrative around this, that doesn't really seem like an option. Is that correct?
I don't know where that's coming from. I mean, he doesn't have any guaranteed money after this season, so I mean, he has a huge salary the next 2 years, but there's nothing that would stop a team from restructuring that.
You think they'd
I don't
want
think.
to because they
Yeah,
want to. If they're going to trade for him, you want to keep him. I think you don't want him just for a 1 year rental. So I think that would be a part of the deal. You look at and make sure he wants to be here and get a new deal, a restructure done. But that's what the problem is. The Saints. Saints have no salary cap room, so they need the Raiders to pay some of it down this year to make the deal happen. So that's one of the reasons they're also, I think, on the back burner right now.
yeah, and I mean, in terms of like when they had to restructure the last 2 years of his deal, like they don't have to do that this year. Like they could wait until the offseason to get that done. The main issue right now is his money for this season, because the Raiders haven't been willing to pay that down. They're paying him roughly around $1 million a week every week that he doesn't play, and so that number is going to drop by almost 1 million every week from here. I think it's honestly kind of a odd decision by the Raiders not to pay down the salary. I mean, the Raiders of old in Oakland, back when cash was a little bit tighter, that might have been an issue, but they're rolling in it since they moved to Vegas from everything that's been reported. And so I'm not counting Mark Davis's pockets, but I feel like if he wanted to, he could probably pay down that salary, if not the whole thing, most of it, or a significant chunk of it in order to get, a greater haul back for Adams. To me, I mean, you're paying him $1 million a week not to play anyway. I feel like that's worth the cost to get a better draft pick and just kind of be beyond the situation.
Yeah, I agree, and I think what I was talking about was when people talk about it on a national scope, it sounds they all talk about it as if it's a 1 year rental, um, and I wonder if the value for Devontae does go up if you do consider that he will presumably restructure the last 2 years of the deal with the if he's happy with the team he gets traded to.
I mean, he's under contract regardless. I mean, he's under contract through 2026. So I mean, it's not like he's an expiring deal or anything like that. So I mean, unless the team cuts him, like that's really the only way that he would get free from that contract. Even if they don't want to restructure it, and so there's not like a risk where like you're going to trade for him and then he's going to sign with another team in free agency next offseason. So that's not really part of the math. It's just a matter of are you willing to pay the cash just to restructure that? Because I mean, I think it's this cap hit next year would be like $35 million or $36 million if a team traded for him. I guess in theory you could carry that cap hit, but just being realistic, a team is probably going to get that number now. The player has to agree to any restructure, but I don't see why Devante, assuming that he gets traded to a place where he wants to be, he wouldn't want more guaranteed money. Because I mean, if he doesn't restructure his deal, it's $0 guaranteed. So it would only behoove him at that point, if assuming it's a place that he wants to be, like the Jets and the Saints are his top two options to restructure that deal. So it's not really a
He
part of
wants
the
to go to a
math.
team with a winning window. I'm not sure that in that window. I don't think it has to just be 1 year. It has to be probably like the next couple of years. He wants to win a ring, and maybe it can happen this year. At least you're on the right track to make it happen next year. So he just wasn't very comfortable with the future here, as far as the stability and the talent and where they were headed. So I'm sure he'll, if he somehow comes back here and tries to play here again, I'm sure he'll dance around that and say maybe he was misquoted or didn't really say that, but. That's what he told Antonio Pierce that like, he can't have his career finish this way because clearly he's not seeing progress as far as quarterback goes and just the winning direction and stability, which you want in a team that you think can make the playoffs and make a run that has not been evident here while he's been here. It's been kind of a downhill spiral for him and all those other quarterbacks they've had. So, I mean, he's kind of stuck. I think he may have played his hand a little too strongly, too fast. I think maybe he thought the market was there for him. If he asked for a trade, it would happen. But clearly, the market's not quite set, and teams aren't willing to jump as high as you want right now. Maybe it might be in a couple of weeks, but so clearly now his hamstring's getting better. I mean that blocks you a couple of weeks, but now at some point you got to play again. Teams want to see you play, and so it sounds ridiculous, but there are a lot of things that have happened here with the Raiders that have been ridiculous in the last decade or 2 decades. So him coming back and playing is not out of the realm of possibilities.
I mean, it's kind of insane if he's on a trade block and you play him and he gets hurt, then his value just tanks. So it's kind of I think it's kind of insane to play him if you are considering trading him. If he is going to be a Raider and he believes in the potential of Aidan O'Connell and he wants to stay here long term, then yeah, play him. But then if you're looking to trade him and you're just trying to win a couple games, it's just not worth playing him at this point, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Yeah, I think unless you are deciding that he's going to be a Raider the rest of the season at least, then it doesn't really make sense to play him. Like, maybe you come to some sort of agreement. We'll work it out this year, and if things don't go well, then we'll revisit trade talks in the offseason. But I don't think you can play the in between game. Well, yeah, we're going to play you, but we're also still trying to trade you. Like, I don't really think that works in terms of a dynamic, or is really smart for them. Because, like you said, I mean, all it takes is don't want to wish injury on anybody, but if he has some sort of significant injury or something like that, then you're fucked. So it doesn't really behoove you to do that unless you think that he's going to be with you for the rest of the season at least.
Yep. Maybe we'll see on Sunday. Maybe the game was over and he walks over to the Steelers locker room and George Pickens walks to the Raiders locker room. Just change locker rooms and we throw a pick in there and we'll all move on with our lives. But I think we're all looking for closure at some point and it just may not happen as fast as he wanted or as fast as everybody else wanted. But I think the ideal solution for everybody is he's somewhere else uh, at some point soon.
Yeah, and I just think if you're serious about winning and paying that paying out the rest of his salary, it's the difference between a third round pick or a second round pick. You got to pay the money. I mean, it it's against the rules to pay for a draft pick, but this situation right now gives you that chance to do it. And these picks are so valuable. Just pay the money. Just pay it. You know, Mark Davis, you got money now, man. Just use it.
There's still a
Uh,
principle. I mean, the principle of not paying a guy off who doesn't want to be here. I mean, you're
well, he's
right. I
getting paid
mean,
anyway. Somebody's gonna pay him.
right, but I mean, right now you're buying time. Right now, it's a $930,000 a week. I think it's 4 o'clock every Tuesday. He gets another game check. So right now he's buying time to hopefully get a better deal, and maybe some teams can have more clarity what they want to do. But yeah, you clearly can't pay him the rest of the year and not play him. So, but we'll see. I mean, I think everything right now is, to use the old Jack Del Rio phrase, it's all fluid right now. So we'll see what happens. But it's like a soap opera, and every day we'll show up and see what happens today.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about players that are Raiders. Christian Wilkins, who was playing phenomenal ball. I just kind of rewatched the Broncos game, and man, he was balling before he got hurt, and it was clear that he was limping too before the. I think a lot of people suspect the celebration after his sack was what injured him, but I mean, you can notice him kind of limping around after plays before that. So, do you guys have any updates on Christian Wilkins and when do you think he'll potentially be back? I mean, he's on IR, so he's out at least 4 weeks.
Yeah, I mean the Jones fracture, it's a foot injury. I think it probably would be a little bit of a stretch for him to get back this season. If he does, it would be toward the end of the season. And at that point, I think you have to consider where they are in terms of contention. Like if they're pushing for a playoff spot and it's week 14 and he can, I'm just throwing that number out there. If he can make it back, then it makes sense. But I think if you're a shitty team at the end of the season, like is it really worth throwing him out there and risking him, aggravating the injury or hurting something else, overcompensating for it? Probably not. And so, unfortunately, it seems like a situation where, we might have seen the last of Christian Wilkins this season, but they aren't quite sure yet.
I think Pierce was saying that Wilkins is telling him he'll be back soon. He's going to try and be back. I think closer to 4 weeks. But I do think the nature of the injury, plus being a large guy, I'm a large guy myself. I know how it is. Your feet are tough, man. It takes a while for your feet to bounce back. And I've never had Jones fracture, but I just imagine for a guy who's a pass rusher who's doing a lot of bending and leaning and twisting, it's not a normal kind of thing to come back and say, yeah, I'm fine. So I do think, like Tashan said, he's back. He'll be closer to the end of the year, and at which point you really got to question, the value of him coming back if you're of a losing record. But that's down the road. But yes, no. To answer your question, not back anytime soon.
He does kind of have that Max Crosby insane mentality where he seems like if he could, walk, he's going to try to play. So I, I I mean, I wouldn't be surprised to see him back at some point, even if it's not the best thing for him. Just because I feel like he has that mentality. But maybe the Raiders have to protect him from himself.
Yeah, even with Max Crosby, we saw they made him sit down, and he has been practicing things of that nature. So I get the sense that I don't know how to frame this, but I think the regime is not going to push it too much with their key guys. If they do have something that if they're hurt, that's one thing, but if you're injured, they're going to play on the cautious side most likely this year. And in terms of like what that means for the defense, I mean, Adam Butler, you mentioned him. He's most likely going to slide into that starting spot that Wilkins leaves behind alongside John Jenkins, and we'll see. It's an opportunity for some of the younger guys on the roster that haven't really played much to show what they have. Nesta J. Silvera, Matthew Butler, Jonah Loalu, guys like that. Some names that really haven't been on the field much. At this point, they're going to have to play out of necessity. So we'll see if any of those guys step up because I think Adam Butler and John Jenkins last year, they were pretty solid veteran defensive tackle duo for the Raiders. So they filled this role before, but obviously you need some depth on the D line. So we'll see if any of those young guys are able to step up.
Yeah. Also, one thing I was wondering was, I didn't look at the snap counts, but was Tyree Wilson's snap counts cut a little bit?
I'd have to look at it. I
I
don't
don't think
recall.
so, but I think just not always visible a lot of plays.
Jesus Christ.
No, he's getting better. That was a low. I take that one back. He's definitely working hard. He's got some confidence. We talked about in the past, but he's just not the guy who's going to make an impact often in a game. We're not gonna, I think there's going to be players you don't notice him a lot. But I think the plan here is like Deshaun said, attacking with depth. Hopefully, you have guys get a rotation going. And like today, Patrick Graham talked about the violence of the strike, having their hands be violent, just kind of pushing the whole. You hear the cliche all the time, the next man mentality, but that's all you really got to go with. That you have no choice. You got to like Max Crosby's today talked about. He's preaching to the choir, like, "Hey man, we're not dead. We can do this, and we got to roll with the punches." He also joked that he's like Rocky Balboa being a Raider because he's had a lot of punches in his career, but he's been pretty funny this week. But yeah, so you just got to and Patrick Graham, they've had success with him in the past, the system. So I think you got to hope for the best. I mean, I think the one bright spot, the injury report today was long, but Devante Adams seems like he's finally back, which he's been missed. I think definitely the linebackers behind him were not quite what the coaching staff thought they would be as far as able to fill in. So that's one guy you get back. So now you're only down three starters on defense. But clearly, and again, the Steelers are not a great offense, so I think there's some hope this week.
Before we get into the Steelers preview, let's talk about our last topic. Before the preview, Tom Brady is nearing approval for ownership. You guys have any updates about that?
Yeah, reported yesterday. So he's been, he reached an agreement with Mark Davis last year alongside his business partner to purchase what we believe would be 10% of the franchise. It's hit some lows because there's been some back and forth with other NFL owners over, Mark Davis giving Tom Brady too much of a discount. For people that don't know, basically, franchise valuation, I think the Raiders right now is 7 point something billion dollars. Like, that's only if you sell the whole thing. But if you sell like a chunk of it, then you don't necessarily have to pay, whatever the 10% of the total valuation is. And so Tom Brady, whatever agreement he reached with Mark Davis was less than that amount, and some owners thought it was a little bit too low. The Washington Post reported last week that he upped his offer, and so looks like it has a decent chance to get voted on next week at the owners' meetings down in Atlanta on Tuesday. You need majority of the owners to approve him, but if he does, then Tom Brady will become minority owner of the Las Vegas Raiders. So
The Raider fans doesn't care. Who like? I mean, what? Who
I
cares? I
think they're
mean,
mad. I think they're mad about it.
they're mad
Comments on the
about it.
story. Yeah, they're still mad about the Tuck rule. Mad about him not coming to play for the Raiders
I mean,
the two
I could
times they
see.
tried to come get him.
I can see that, man. The guy screwed you over the Tuck rule, and now you're going to cut him in with his juicy profits. He's going to make money off you guys. Yeah, screw Tom Brady, man.
Yeah,
Call
man.
call the whole thing off, man. I don't like it. I'm out. I'm out.
Yeah, but, hey, Mark, listen. This is the way. Tom Brady, he's gonna have to cut Mark Davis a big check. He can use some of that check to pay down Devante Adams' salary and get a second round pick. That's how it's gonna
Right,
play out, man. Here you go.
right. All right,
I
there you
mean,
go.
I think this is a good thing. I mean, Mark Davis has clearly made a lot of bad decisions. You know, I I mean, come
Wow.
on. The
Yes,
Raiders have not been good.
sure.
It's been failed coach after failed coach. It's been failed GM after failed GM. And, he's not the football mind his dad was. And of course, Al Davis was not making a great decision towards the end of his life. But Mark's just is not a football. He doesn't have that football mind. So I think having somebody like Tom Brady, who obviously knows the game, knows a winning culture, and he's not. It's not like I don't think he's going to go install the Patriots way or anything, but I think he'll help sort out and help hire some good people in leadership to hopefully get this thing right.
Do you know who was one of the worst basketball front office minds of all time? Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was awful when he tried to run the basketball team. So I don't know if Tom Brady's success means he has any idea about who to sign or
You know
salary
who's one of
cap
the
stuff.
greatest of basketball minds? Jerry West.
All right, that's
That's
fine.
fair county.
All right, it's
Fair
good
county.
counting. All right, I take it back. Still, um, I don't really know how much of a role Tom Brady's going to have as far as the day to day and it could just be a case
You
where he's
wouldn't.
counting his money and having a good time playing golf out here. But I don't know if he said he wants to have a big. I think he's actually said he does not really want to have a big role. But I guess we'll find out more when we get closer to that date. But it could just be a thing where he's a silent partner, kind of enjoying all those fat checks coming his way.
Yeah, to be clear, like Mark Davis will remain the principal owner, even if the deal does go through. So if he does, he can consult Tom Brady right now if he wants to. But if he wanted to bring him into decisions, he could, but he doesn't necessarily have to. So we'll see how that all unfolds as time goes on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Brady's going to be involved in the day to day, but when you're making a decision like hiring a coach or a GM, I think his say will be pretty valuable. But let's get into injuries. You guys talked about Devon Diablo coming back. What other
Yeah,
injury updates are there?
I got a couple of positives. I mean, Thayer Munford, he's been limited in practice this week. He's missed the last couple games due to knee and ankle injuries. We'll see if he has a chance to get back on the field. DJ Glaze has been starting at right tackle, and I think he's been solid. So, be interested to see like if Munford is active, do they stick with Glaze? Do they go back to Munford? That'll be something to watch. As Vic mentioned, Divine Diablo, he's been full this week, so it looks like he's angling towards coming back. Cornerback DeCammy Richardson started practicing for the first time, I believe, since the regular season started. He's been out for a long time with a hamstring injury. Safety Trey Taylor has been full. He hasn't played all year, so maybe he might be able to get on the field this week. Um, in terms of bad news, Zamir White still isn't practicing due to a groin injury. Davante Adams, of course, isn't practicing. Jacoby Myers hasn't been practicing with an ankle injury. He said he was fine on Wednesday, but he didn't practice again today. So see if he's able to get back out there on Friday. But they could potentially, we'll see, maybe be without Myers this week as well. Jackson Powers Johnson hasn't practiced this week due to a knee injury. Max Crosby hasn't practiced this week. That seems to be more of a maintenance thing. Like he probably is going to play. They just aren't risking him in practice. And then linebacker Tommy Eichenberg didn't practice today due to a hamstring injury. So um, some bad injury news for the Raiders on a couple of fronts there. In terms of the Steelers, Cordell Patterson, he didn't practice. DeMarvin Leal didn't practice. Nick Herbig didn't practice. And Alex Highsmith, he didn't practice on Wednesday, but he got back out there on Thursday. So looks like he might have a chance to play. He's a pretty good pass rusher for the Steelers. So Steelers seem to have the advantage in terms of health. The Raiders are dealing with a lot on both sides of the ball right now. But we'll see how that final injury report looks on Friday.
He mentioned Munford and Glaze, and the sense I get is that I think Glaze has been solid. He's been, he's had some ups and downs as a rookie. It's tough to be thrown in there, but I think they see some upside there, and I do start to get the sense that maybe they let him go with it. They stick with him over Munford. I think they want to see that the development, and again, I think a lot depends on how the wins and losses go. But I think player development is going to be important for them going forward this year. And with him, if he's a guy you think is a higher ceiling, let him have the growing pains and kind of grow with it. I think we've seen good things in pass pro, especially from him. So yeah, they've had some success with the rookies this year, and he's definitely one of them.
Yeah, he's been good in the run game, pass pro. He's been up and down. I mean, which is to be expected. He's going to have a monster matchup against TJ Watt this week. But yeah, I'd be interested to see how he plays. But I'm still interested to see Munford plays too. I think they didn't really get a chance to evaluate Munford because he got hurt so quickly. So you know, he's also a young player, so I wouldn't count him out exactly. But I do understand if they do want to keep sticking with Glaze. I think the Herbig injury is a pretty big deal. He's the secondary pass rusher to for Watt, and he's been phenomenal this season. And as soon as he got hurt against the Cowboys, I think things really turned for them. Um, Without Herbig, I just think you're able to focus so much attention to TJ Watt, and that defensive line all of a sudden becomes a little less scary. So he did not practice. I don't think he's going to play this week. Do you guys get a sense of if he's going to play or not?
Who?
No,
Who you saying?
I have no idea.
Who you saying? On the Steelers?
Herbig, is there a chance he
We
plays
don't
this week,
cover the
or is
fucking
he out?
Steelers. Ted, we don't know.
I'm not the we're at 24/7 Devante watch. I'm not watching fucking Steelers defensive lineman. Come on, man.
I think he's out. I mean, I remember.
We'll
I
see.
think
I
he's
mean, he
out. From
hasn't been
what
practicing
I've
this
read,
week.
I think he's
We'll
out.
see.
I just thought maybe you guys talked to some Steelers people or something, and
I
but
talked to him about Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, and I think I was told 95% that Fields plays over Russ, because Russ is kind of hinting he wants to play and he's ready. But I think they're going to give Fields at least one more week. At some point, Russell will play, but I don't get the sense it's this week. So I have asked people on Pittsburgh about that, but I'm not asking about the injuries besides Russell's.
all right. Well, let's get into our game preview. What are you guys watching when the Raiders have the ball?
Yeah, see if your guy fucking AOC gives him this spark that you've been saying he's gonna give all season. I mean, he's talking like he's
It's not a
Tom Brady
spark.
or
It's a
something.
jolt. Is it first? It's a
We'll,
jolt. All right. It's a
A
jolt.
jolt?
whatever it
Yeah.
is, we'll see if it looks any different at quarterback for
There's
them.
no way he's giving them a jolt without Davante Adams. I
No,
think you better
we
go
agreed
back
that
down to
jolt
Spark.
is like lesser. The
Jolt's
lesser.
lesser than Spark.
Is it?
Jolt
I
sounds
don't
like
know. I
no
thought we
Jolt.
agreed jolt was the
Is it?
lesser than spark.
I don't recall having this conversation with you about Jolt versus Sparks, but I think Jolts aren't they like thunder? Isn't it like a thunder Jolt?
Look at this.
What is
Somebody
that?
replied to the Aidan O'Connell like right as we recorded this.
I mean, so
That's
I,
pretty accurate.
I think I lower your bar a little bit. I don't think. I mean, we want. I think the Raiders just want no interceptions. I think they want no turnovers and just kind of ideally it was had the running game has to get going to give the buy them some time. Otherwise, there'll be a sitting duck back there. But I think Jolt, Spark, whatever you're saying, let's bring it down a little bit. Just let's try to get some first downs and some points and kind of build some momentum slowly but surely.
Yeah, I think it's just about cutting the negative plays out, like you said, less interceptions and less sacks, less holding on to the ball, and just see what you could do on offense when you kind of lower that rate of negative plays. And it just seemed like towards the end there, Gardner Minshew was just lost his confidence. I mean, just so jittery in a pocket, missing passes. It seemed like they had no choice but to sit him at this point and let him figure things out. I guess.
I mean, I will say, I know you're talking about kind of did a lot. He took a lot of shots. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think you're talking about he forced some of the pressure on himself and he's jittery, but anybody be jittery if it's under constant pressure. The line has not been very good this year. So I don't think that really bodes well for Aidan, but maybe he gets rid of the ball faster and it's not an issue. But I think Gardner clearly was not comfortable. I think part of that was because I think he thought he had some more time back there, and he probably thought he had Devante to throw the ball to the last couple of weeks. But yeah, I think it's at this point, yeah, you got to make a switch because the offense 5 games is a good sample size, and they kind of stink. So you can't. They change running backs. They got to change quarterbacks. So I'm not sure what's next. Maybe I don't know what you do next, but yeah. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think when the Raiders have the ball, obviously they need to be able to run the ball, and I think they have run the ball a little bit better, especially with Jackson Powers Johnson in there, and I think they're trying less to be less of an outside zone team. Outside zone is going to be their staple, of course, but they're trying out other concepts, which has been helpful. And the Steelers, you can run the ball on them a little bit. I mean, that's I think that's the one area where you can't get them. You don't want to be in too many third and long situations against them. They're 30th in tackles for losses or stops at the line of scrimmage. So I think there's potential to run the ball on them, but you don't want to get into third and long,
Um,
obviously. And
it,
what was that?
yeah, I think it might be tough. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they're fifth in rushing yards allowed, and third in yards per carry allowed, so they're pretty good against the run. I think it might be tough for this Raiders run game. Like, because people pointed out, I think last week when you just looking at the numbers, like the total yardage and yards per carry, it looked like the Raiders had a solid day on the ground against the Broncos. But they had that one long run by Amir Abdullah. But outside of that, when it came to running back carries, it really wasn't too good. I mean, Alexander Madison struggled a little bit. It looks like Zamir White, might be doubtful to play again this week. I don't know. I don't know. I just don't. I don't know if this is going to be the week that they get the ground game going against this tough Steelers run. Maybe they prove me wrong, but uh, it'd be tough sledding this week.
We need more Abdullah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they should ever be a team that goes to a run heavy script, but I think they have to at least get some efficient gains. But it seems like this is more of a run game that eventually hits some explosives here and there, but they're just not very good from down to down, and they're still the worst team in the league as far as offensive rushing success, which kind of measures efficiency. So maybe that I think ideally they get some efficient runs and stay out third and long, but it just it's probably not going to happen. I think you can hit some explosive pass plays against the secondary. The problem is just buying enough time. And like I mentioned, like the pass rush is going to be weakened this week with the injuries. And if you could focus on taking away T.J. Watt, there's some holes in the secondary, especially on the outside against these corners. I, the Cowboys moved the ball up and down against this team. They just really were really bad in the red zone. So if you could
Cowboys
block
Cowboys
TJ.
have Dak Prescott though,
Let's say
so
have
Yeah,
Dak
but
Prescott, CD
he made
Lamb.
he made
It's
some very
a little
impressive
bit
throws.
different. A
Yeah,
little
but
bit
there
different.
were some wide open throws too. So
No, they have they've have
I think
had some.
I mean these corners aren't that good. I would say
okay,
that's the weakness of this defense
all right.
are their corners.
Let's attack him, man.
I think everybody expects Joey Porter Jr. to have like a big step up after he played his rookie year, but I don't think he's played that well this year. So yeah, Trey Tucker's got to be. I think for this offense to move the ball, this is a game where Trey Tucker has to be very good in this game.
I agree. I think Trey definitely can be if his speed is at a definitely different level. I would try to avoid the jump balls. There were 2 of them last week. They tried to throw up to him. It was like 5-7. So I mean that one you got to get rid of those plays. But
Don't test Riley Moss, man. Riley Moss is the
Riley,
guy.
Riley Moss. Okay. I ended up walking away from that game thinking Riley Moss was the guy. But I think obviously Buck Bowers would be a focal point. I mean, it's going to be tougher on him now without Davante. I think he's now the focus of defenses. So we'll see that. I mean, Steelers definitely, I'm sure, will game plan against him to take him out of the game. So you need guys like Tucker and Myers to kind of step up and make plays, and maybe even Madison out of the backfield. Madison, we talked about his running; he's not been great, but definitely can be a weapon out of the backfield catching some balls. So maybe that's the way you go this week, try to get him some passes in space.
Yeah, and this is a cover three heavy zone team, so you'll be able to get the ball short to Brock Bowers as well. Jake Ferguson from the Cowboys had A couple passes underneath that he turned into 10, 13-yard gains. So obviously that needs to be in the game plan as well and should be every week. But especially against this team, you got to be able to get Brock Bowers the ball in the quick game. When the Steelers have the ball, what are you guys watching for?
I think the big thing this week's model for the Raiders is can they tackle? I mean, it's been pretty bad the last few weeks. They lead the NFL in missed tackles, according to Pro Football Reference. And one thing about the Steelers is they're going to play physical football. They haven't been the most efficient rushing team this year, but they're going to do it anyway with Najee Harris and obviously Justin Fields. You know what he can do with his legs. With him, us expecting him to be the starter this week, and so I think the Raiders have to step up big time when it comes to tackling, and that we've seen that some of these plays that should have been short runs or maybe short completions have turned into big plays for these teams that they've been going against, and so that has come to an end, especially with them missing a few guys. On the defensive side of the ball, Christian Wilkins obviously out for a while. Malcolm Kuntz out for the season. Marcus Epps out for the season, and so they can't have these self-inflicted issues. Missed tackles, not to say that the offense doesn't have a factor in that, but that's really a issue when it comes to fundamentals on defense, and so they have to shore that stuff up.
Yeah, Epps is good against the run, and we talked about him being the guy in the back who's always in charge and kind of directing traffic. But he also, I thought, was pretty solid against the run. So I think he'll be missed this week. And the Steelers are not very efficient at running the ball. Najee Harris is not what he was supposed to be out of college, but they're going to try and establish him because that's what they do. So I think a lot of the focus will be on the guys in front. You mentioned Butler and Jenkins; those guys need to at least shore up their front line, at least at the start of the game, kind of discourage the Steelers from thinking they can run the ball down their throats, because then they're going to go back to some other stuff. But the Steelers always have the same plan. They come out, they try to punch you in the mouth, and then they react after that. So if you can stop those runs early on, you'll definitely be in a good situation going forward.
Yeah, and you have to stop. The biggest threat for the Steelers right now is Justin Fields running the ball, and for you to stop that option game, the secondary guys have to come up and tackle. They did a good job against Lamar Jackson. So Palomau, Jack Jones, Jacoin Bennett, Morig, those guys have to be ready to come up. And Justin Fields is obviously a different type of runner than Lamar Jackson. You're gonna have to bring it against him. You maybe you don't have to worry about getting juked out of your shoes as much. I mean, he's still capable of doing that. But these guys have to be ready. I mean, it's a unique challenge having to tackle a quarterback that big and that fast, and you can't let him get into the open field. As far as their receiving, their passing game, there's just not a lot of threats that you have to worry about. I mean, George Pickens is supposed to be that guy, but he's so inconsistent. I mean, if you watch the tape against the Cowboys, I mean, there's plays where he's just jogging around, and there's a reason why they're cutting his snaps. Like he's just not. I mean, if he knows he's not getting the ball, he's just not very. But I mean, it's it's this kind of type of situation where like maybe he gets the message this week and he starts going all out, and unfortunately for the Raiders, they might catch him on that type of game.
Yeah, I watched him today in the locker room. He was talking to reporters, and he hasn't gotten the message. He was talking about what they asked him why he thought they cut back his workload and his reps. He's like, "Oh, it's just game plan." Which not. I mean, clearly he's not getting the. They're trying to be nice about it, not like chew him out in public and say, "Hey, man, you got to give maximum effort." But there's definitely something under the surface there, which is not good. So that's why I joked. It wasn't really a joke. I mean, I think if the Steelers want Devante Adams and they don't want to give up the high draft picks and whatever the money stuff, maybe you get Pickens back. That's a guy who gives you a young piece going forward. Obviously, there's some challenges there. You got to he's obviously not the finished product, but clearly the talent levels through the roof. So maybe if you're a team that's trying to I hate to use the word rebuild, but maybe George Pickens is an attractive guy for you in exchange for a guy who doesn't want to be here.
Yeah, and Pat Fairmouth is their tight end. They just paid him big money, but he just hasn't been very productive this year. And Justin Fields is not a guy that likes to attack the middle of the field, and that's where Fairmouth would work. So it's just I think they should be able to bottle up this passing game. It's going to be more, can you stop the Steelers option game, because that to me is their biggest threat.
And that's where Diablo really big. Diablo's very, definitely one of the better athletes on defense and has a lot of range. So that's why if him and Spillane are back to working together, definitely have a better shot against Fields as far as keeping him contained a little bit.
All right, let's get into matchups of the game. What is your matchup of the game, Sean?
I think TJ Watt versus whoever's at right tackle, whether that's DJ Glaze or Thayer Munford, either way. I think there's going to be a pretty big mismatch that the Raiders will have to deal with. We'll see Steelers if Alex Highsmith ends up playing or Nick Herbig. If not, that in theory should make it a little bit easier to double team TJ Watt. You still have to worry about Cameron Hayward up the middle, but he's aging a little bit and doesn't seem to be the same player he was in his prime anymore. So I think that TJ Watt matchup is pretty huge. Particularly if it's his Glaze. I mean, a rookie offensive tackle going up against a player like that, like that's tough sledding. And so I would imagine they would send some help his way, whether that's in the form of a chip from a tight end or running backs. I don't think Brock Bowers probably isn't going to do much help when it comes to blocking, but maybe Harrison Bryant could get involved. Or I know we didn't mention, I don't think, an injury report section, but Michael Mayer is still dealing with a personal issue, so he's not going to play this week. But whether it's Alexander Madison or whoever's in there to the block, I think you have to send some extra help to TJ Watt's way because he could wreck this game for you in terms of the pass game. We talked about O'Connell is not the most mobile guy, and so if Watt is getting instant pressure, he's gonna get him. Most likely. So I think that's really the key matchup for this game for the Raiders to have any sort of hope on offense.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely containing Watt's huge. I'll go back to Alexander Madison. I think you need to get the running game going. I think he's the guy right now. But even more importantly, I think that his ability to catch the ball against this defense will be key because Aiden's going to get rid of it. So I think swing passes will be big. I'm sure they're going to try to take away Brock Bowers. So I think you're going to need another target. And you mentioned Trey Tucker, but I do that's a big play option. But I think on second and third downs, I think the swing pass Madison could be a big weapon in this game.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, you kind of mentioned it, but Trey Tucker against Porter Jr. and against Dante Jackson, I think he could. He could beat a lot of corners, but I just don't think these corners are that fast. They let guys get behind him. So I think I'll be looking out for that to see if he could get a big play. I mean, they tried to hit him against the Broncos, but some passes were underthrown, and Roddy Moss is just a very physical press corner, so they weren't able to do that. But we'll see this week if he can get going. All right, let's talk about X factors.
Hmm. Let's see. X factor in this one. I think it's got to be Aiden O'Connell, right? Well, I mean, I know we already talked about him a good amount, but the Raiders are really searching for that spark on offense. I don't know where else it would come from, unless he provides an upgrade for them at the quarterback spot. If it's more of the same, then I think this offense is just going to keep struggling, and the Raiders just aren't going to have enough, firepower on that end to really compete this season. And so I think he's the guy. If they're going to have any different results on offense, he's got to play better than Gardner Minshew did.
Yeah, just don't turn the ball over. I think that's where that was the key thing. I mean, and Aiden's even we saw in preseason and even in the games he's played this year, he will throw a pick. So I don't know if that's the part where under pressure how he responds under pressure, and the Steelers will put some pressure on him. So that's definitely a big storyline is Aiden O'Connell. They made a quarterback change, and again, that's kind of you're hoping that changes your tide of your season a little bit because you're definitely going kind of on a downward path. All these injuries on defense, and you're trying to withstand that. And so I think Aiden O'Connell and it's gonna. I mean, you had 10 games last year, and we saw a good sample size, but that was with Devante, so it's a lot different now without him. So we'll see how his chemistry is with Brock Bowers. That'll be a big thing going forward. But yeah, he's the man on the spot for sure this week.
Yeah, just to go on a defensive side of the ball, say Palomau and Morig. Like I mentioned, those guys are going to be big when it comes to stopping the QB run game. And for this game, for the Raiders to win this game, it's going to have to be a low scoring game. So I think those guys are going to be huge. They can make some big tackles in the alley, maybe bait Fields into a mistake. So those guys are my X factors. All right, let's get into predictions. Everyone's favorite part of the show. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I picked the Steelers. I think too many injuries on the defense side for the Raiders. I think Wilkins is a big loss. I know Jenkins and Butler are fine, but I think just in terms of the pass rush and he's been good against the run this year. It's just a big loss, which I'm not sure they can really recover from against a pretty good team. The Steelers are pretty solid up front, well coached, so I think they'll have a plan to attack them defensively. So too many injuries on defense. I don't know if Aidan O'Connell's a huge difference in guard dimension. To me, they've always been kind of the same boat, so I'm not sure the boat's going to be going any faster in offense. So I'm going to say Steelers 27, Raiders 19.
Yeah, I'm rolling with the Steelers as well. I have them winning 23-13 in this one. I just think, as you mentioned, I think the injury losses are really mounting for the Raiders. I don't think the quarterback change is going to do enough for them to avoid a loss in this one. And Steelers offense has been whatever, but I do think their defense is elite. It's really good, and so I just don't see the Raiders putting up enough points in this one.
I'm gonna go Raiders. I'm gonna say they're gonna get that little Aiden O'Connell jolt, and they're gonna
What a shock!
and I don't, I think Patrick Graham is gonna come out with a good game plan against the Steelers. I have a feeling that Patrick Graham's gonna go old school Patrick Graham and go a lot of cover zero blitzes to deal with these injuries and to really test it if Fields is able to get rid of the ball quickly and beat the blitz. And yeah, I'm gonna say Raiders win this one 17-13.
Wow, what a thrilling game that would
I
be.
like it, man. That's a huge boost from Aiden O'Connell.
Oh, yeah.
Jolt.
17
No, no, no,
points.
no. Not bolt. Not boost. Not
Oh, no,
shot.
whatever.
It's
No, I mean it should be a low
jolt.
scoring game. They have a chance to win. I mean the Steelers are not great. The game, the defense is pretty great, but the offense, I think this could be Fields' last start. Probably is my guess. I think the Russell Wilson, he's itching to go, and I think they kind of promised him a shot. And he was the starting quarterback before the year started. He got hurt, so I think the Steelers have lost two in a row. I think now, so I think this is kind of a probably will be Fields' last start. But he's been fine, just not been great. But I think they clearly want to try and have some more passing success. That's why I think they'll go back to Russell at some point. But it's a winnable game. I know that's a phrase you Raider fans or Ted hates to hear, but it is winnable. I just don't think they have the horses to do it on defense.
All right. Let's get into fan questions. Outside of better quarterback play, what kinds of things can the offense do to get going? More shots, trick plays, etc. Thanks as always from John Nars 5.
Yeah, I think taking more shots downfield. I know that obviously they lost their best deep threat in Devante Adams, because of what's going on. But I think Trey Tucker has some real speed, and then even Brock Bowers. We saw, it wasn't a great pass, but he made a play, early against the Broncos, a deep downfield throw, and turned it into something. And so I think ramp up the aggression. I don't think playing safe and just peppering them with check downs is really going to be the path to success for this offense. Eventually, defenses are just going to wisen up and sit on everything underneath, and then you won't be able to do shit. And so I think from a play calling standpoint, getting a little bit more aggressive, not as predictable, not as many run pass sequences and punting for it on 4th and 1 in your opponent's territory and all that kind of stuff. Like I think you just kind of got to go for it. You know what I mean? Like this team isn't very good. We know that, and the only way you can balance the scales is to take some chances and ramp up the aggression. And so I think that's something that we could still see more of out of the offense.
Yeah, I think more they ran some successfully against the Browns. I'm not sure what happened, but I think more run pass options would help. Just make sure that when you do run a ball, you're running against favorable boxes and maybe linebackers that are a little out leveraged. And you could get, with those run pass options, you get the ball quickly to your playmakers. And I think they need just more ways to get the ball to Brock Bowers. Maybe you see what he's doing with these touches, but I feel like they could get him the ball even more. And I feel like they need to make funnel the offense through him a little bit more. He's clearly, when you look at all the metrics, he's already one of the top receiving tight ends in the league. And those numbers will probably go down if you get him more targets. But he's clearly a factor, and he needs the ball more. All right, next question. Are the quarterback struggles coming from the OC scheme, or are they just that bad? They always seem flustered from Enrico.
I think the thing about it's got to be frustrating for everybody is you watch the games, you watch the film, guys are open. I think that I don't, it gets him. I mean, I don't people give him a hard time, fans especially, but I think you see some of the plays and I think guys are getting open. I think there's definitely a scheme that seems to be okay. Garner's missing them, and the wrinkle last 2 weeks ago about the jet sweeps, that was a nice wrinkle, and we saw like I don't know what it was in training camp, but it seemed like going to be kind of a more exciting offense than they've been. I don't know if they got gun shy because of the turnovers and because of the obviously when you can't run the ball, you definitely have to coach differently. So maybe that'll help to change things. If they get that going. And they have faith that they'll come around to the new scheme at some point. And I think, but yeah, I don't think Getz has been that bad really. I mean fans are want him out of here, but when I watch, I see guys open even though they can't run the ball, which I think is a good sign.
Yeah, I think the quarterbacks just aren't very good. Like I think they're both below average starters, which we saw last year. I mean, both of them started double digit games, and that's what they look like. And we'll see if O'Connell can get better. Like I said, going into his second year and getting more experience, I think he has more of a chance to improve than Minshew does. I think Minshew kind of just is what he is at this point in his career. I mean, he's in his 6th year, older guy, and so I think O'Connell still has a shot to get a little bit better. We'll see what his ceiling is, but I just think the quarterback play hasn't been very good, really, for the Raiders for quite some time now.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Luke Getsy is the best play caller in the world, but he's very good at. I mean, I think he's trying new things. At least he's trying to be creative. He's, like you mentioned, he's trying to fly sweeps. He tries RPOs, but I want to see him put it all together into a cohesive game plan. And there are definitely execution issues. Maybe you could put that on the OC as well. But at least he's trying some new things. And yeah, the quarterback struggles that we've talked about it all show. We'll see if O'Connell could play better with the week of practice, and see if he could build on some of the things he did last year. So last question. Do the chances Davante Adams playing for this team go from 1% to 10% after the news this week? Well, Vic already said 8.5%.
I went from 0 to 8.5, but and I think Antonio clearly he said what he said the other day about how they talked, and it was a big change from Monday. Monday we asked him about Devante. It's like you have to ask him. I don't want to talk about it. Wednesday, oh yeah, he's in a good headspace. When he's healthy, he'll play. He didn't say for who, but I just think it's kind of more about leverage. I think they have to try and act like he still wanted to hear. He still has a chance to play here. I think they're waiting for a team to kind of make an offer they can jump at, and maybe that happens next week. I think the Jets are still a favorite. I think they fired their coach this week, and they got a big game against the Bills on Monday night. So I think that's a big game as far as if you're 2-4. I don't know if you really can still a high draft pick for an aging receiver, but if you're 3-3 and think, yeah, okay, now we're on the right track, and we got rid of the coach, Rodgers is happy, they'll get him as receiver and get some momentum going. So I think the Jets are still in play. It's just a matter of what they're willing to give up for him.
Yeah, I think I'm sticking at 0%. I don't think he's going to be back.
0. All right.
We saw him in there eating lunch today, and he's been rehabbing and all that, but I think he gets traded. So
Hey, it's a good cafeteria. They have quality food there. So if you get a free lunch
I would
there,
be there too.
exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
What was I was at 2% originally, and then after after hearing after hearing that the comments about he's still a Raider, I upped it to 5%, and then when I heard that he was in a cafeteria, I'm gonna up it to 7%. So I'm at 7% right now.
so I'm
None of us
eight.
are 10. So
No, 8.5 is the high. So if you average it together, 15.5 divided by 3. So as a whole, the adjustment podcast is saying there is a 5.15 percent chance that Devontae's back.
yeah, so no
Sounds like a great
10%.
number.
It's not 1%. It's at 5 point. What you said 5.1.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we can discuss it, I'm sure, next week, but I think players other players in the locker room kind of feel like he quit on the team. So I don't know if that's going to be a great I mean, obviously he's a great player, so you do what you can when he comes back in. But I think they kind of want closure at this point. I think they kind of want to let that ship sail and move on with the guys who want to be here.
Yeah, I agree. It just seems like once you start the process, it's d- d- rarely do you get to be able to go back and say, "Oh no, it's all good." Everything's fine again. So unlikely, but we will see what happens. All right, that's it for today. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you like and subscribe on Apple and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us, and we will be with you guys live after the Steelers game, in which the Raiders will win because I predicted it, and it's gonna happen.
Okay.
So,
All right. All
all
right,
right,
I
y'all.
like
guys,
it.
see you
Peace.
Sunday.
If they win, you get like a little O'Connell tattoo like on your wrist, like a little.
Yeah, at this point.
Yeah, I think that'd be a nice
Uh,
touch.
I'll get the AOC meme tatted on me.
all right.
What's the other one from the show? The Troopers.
No, the
That
one
one.
that I've been tweeting every time Gardner Minshew makes a mistake. No, I'm just
Oh, okay, I
kidding.
got you. I got you. All right.
All
Well,
right,
so
guys.
whatever you want. All right, boys.
All right, y'all.
Hasta la
Peace.
vista.